Hey creatives, Karen here, mixed media artist and creative at By the Wolf Moon. Welcome to episode 3 of the Coming Home to Self series, where I am creating an art journal with you with the purpose of getting to know our true authentic selves better. Just a quick recap. The first episode we did a piece of art based around our name, and the second episode, part 1 and 2, we created a map of our journey and the environment that we want for ourselves. We're up to episode 3 and the third page third spread in our journal. But I just wanted to quickly show you the previous journal that I had made following the same kind of ideas. This was my page based around my name, and then this page was the page based around the map, and this is the spread that we are working on now, or something similar. It won't be exactly the same. Your journal will not be the same as mine. It's all based around our own creativity. But today we're working on paper dolls. These are the ones that I had made for my previous journal, and today we're making some that are a little bit different. In these first paper dolls I made, I used fabric. I love fabric. I am a lifelong sewer, and so fabric is quite meaningful to me. But in these paper dolls that we're making today, I am actually just using paper, and this is what they will turn out like. Like I said, yours will be completely different, because the whole idea is that we are getting your creative juices flowing and creating something that is really meaningful to you. So I started off with just a cereal box, and I used the whole back of the cereal box and folded it concertina style, and then 2 extra panels because I want 6 paper dolls in total. And then I just used masking tape to attach the 2 single panels so that we had a concertina with the 6 panels for 6 paper dolls. I use masking tape on both the front and the back because we really want them to be joined together well and not come apart. Now is probably a good time to say that so far it might seem that a lot of the pages we're creating are focused very much on our outer world with our name and our environment, and now our paper dolls. But our outer and inner worlds are very much interconnected, and we are, as we go through the journal, we will go deeper and deeper into our inner selves. It's not that we're not connecting with our inner selves at this time. It's just that we are easing into it gently, I guess. And creativity is very much about inner work, so it gives us a lot of time to be with our thoughts, especially if we are creating from our heart and soul and letting our creativity flow naturally, rather than just following a set of instructions and creating a carbon copy of someone else's work, which is why I very much say that your art journal is going to be completely different to mine, and it's why I want you to use what you have around the house rather than buying pre-existing printed papers and things like that, because I am really passionate about getting people to connect with their own creativity, and even when they feel like they're not creative or not talented in an arty way, we all have creativity within us, and we can all create something really meaningful and beautiful to us. So I've said it before and I'll say it again, I'm not hugely talented at drawing, but I have other skills that I'm talented at. But that's the whole point I'm making. It's not about how accurately you can draw something that already exists. It's about allowing your creativity out and onto your paper or whatever medium you're using. So this is the shape of the paper dolls that I am wanting to use. You can use any, just use whatever shape comes naturally to you. And basically we just want to draw a physical form on the first panel of our concertinaed card, and then cut around that shape. This is the easiest way that I've found to do it. When we're kids and we're making paper dolls out of paper, we drew the shape on the top sheet and then cut all of the sheets together. But when you're working with card, it's a little bit harder to do that. So this is the easiest way that I've found to do it, which is to draw the shape on the first panel and then cut around it, making sure not to actually separate that paper doll from the next panel. So they're always going to be joined, in this case, at where their hands would meet. And then I simply trace the shape onto the next panel and then cut around that. And you'll find as you go that the shape gradually changes, and that's totally fine. That doesn't bother me at all, because each of our paper dolls is going to be an individual. They're just they're an individual making up a complete whole, if that makes sense. So each paper doll is actually going to be unique, so it doesn't matter if they end up being all the same shape or size or anything like that. But of course, if you prefer yours to be completely uniform, then by all means make them completely uniform. So just remembering here when you're cutting out not to separate the two paper dolls where they join at their hands. Otherwise you'll just have to stick them back together. So I just want to quickly say that I have got nothing against using pre-printed papers or craft supplies, existing craft supplies or anything like that. It's just that for this particular project I really want to get deeper into our own personalities and things like that, without being restricted to what you can actually purchase, to create that connection with your authentic self. So I guess I should probably explain the concept behind this art piece that we're creating. So the thought process behind paper dolls is that throughout our lifetime we develop different personas, and depending on the situation we find ourselves in, we portray specific personality traits, or we wear specific clothing, or there's a different persona that comes out. So who we are at work, for example, with our colleagues, is quite different to who we are at home with our children, possibly. I'm not saying in all cases, but for me, I know that throughout my life I have created different personas and portrayed different people, and I feel like all of that was in a bid to really get to know my true self a little bit better, or to, it was really about trying to figure out who I was and that sort of thing, which is exactly what I am trying to do in creating this art journal, is just to get to know who I really am authentically. So just quickly, where we are in the video is I wanted some faces to use on my paper dolls. I didn't want to draw faces, and so I thought the Guinness Book of Records might have some really cool different faces, and so what I've done is chosen 6 or 7 different faces that were all around the same size that I thought were interesting. And you can see that they are not gender specific, they're not age specific, they're not even species specific. I have a possum in there and a planet. I just wanted some faces that were interesting and thought-provoking and had some meaning to me. So that's what I've done. You can do something similar. You can use magazines, books, you can draw your faces. You don't even have to have a face. In my first set of paper dolls that I showed you at the start of the video, I actually used buttons and then covered the buttons in foil. You can do something like that. Just get creative and, you know, really think creatively when you're doing this sort of thing. That this is what I wanted to do in this instance. So I'm just fussy cutting around each face and then sticking them onto each paper doll. So when I started this journey of coming home to myself, it really was a struggle for me to know who I was. I really didn't know who I was or how I wanted to feel. I'd just come out of quite a few years of living in the shadows, and I really wanted to know what the light me was, like who she was, and I really needed to get to know myself properly, which is something that I didn't feel like I have done at any stage in my life. So the paper dolls were a really good way for me to reflect on the different personas that I've portrayed, the different feelings I've had in those personas, the different feelings I'm trying to feel when I am acting as one of those personas. And it gives me the opportunity to reflect on what parts of those personas make me feel good and what I want to keep in the person I am and portray to the outside world today. So doing this activity was really good, a really good time for reflection on who I am and who I want to be, because I have the experience of knowing who I have been in the past, and so I am now using that experience to create who I am now and who I will be in the future. I feel like we spend a lot of time thinking about you know, what we want from life, like what kind of house we want, what kind of career we want, what kind of money we want, what we want to fill our days with, and we don't spend a lot of time actually considering who we want to be personally on a more personal level, like how we want to love and how we want to give away our kindness and our compassion, you know, how we want to express our feelings and how we want to express ourselves as a person on this planet. I feel like we don't really spend a lot of time doing that throughout our life. Well, I know for me, I haven't given that a lot of thought or a lot of time. I've kind of just evolved based on the world around me. So I've allowed the world around me to manipulate and mold me into the person I am in any given moment, if that makes sense. And I think that by not allowing myself the time to really consider those things, and that is how I managed to fall or move so far away from my authentic self and spend a lot of time in the shadows and in the depths and in the darkness. So that's just one of the reasons why this project in particular has been really helpful to me. So back to the video, you can see that I am just drawing some outfits for my paper dolls now. and I'm just using tea stained paper to do that, and pencil. Just really basic simple supplies. And another thing I'd like to point out right now is that when you're creating this art and this art journal, don't create it with the intention of showing other people. I want you to create it only with the intention of it being meaningful to you. So you don't have to worry about someone else looking at the page or looking at your art and wondering whether or not they'll understand it. No one else has to understand it. It only has to be meaningful to you. So for example, someone looking at my paper dolls is going to see a possum wearing a dress right there in the middle and probably wonder what the hell I have been taking. But the point is that they don't have to understand it. This piece of art that I'm creating right now only has to be meaningful to me. Only I have to know what it means and what it represents for me. So yeah, so that's kind of one thing I really want to be very clear on. Your art doesn't have to make sense, and it doesn't have to make sense to anyone else. It only has to represent or be meaningful to you. Again, this is a very personal, almost selfish project. It is all about you and all about connecting with your authentic, however weird and crazy that may be, self. And that's what makes it so fun, because we get to be really creative and really go outside of the box of, what is logical, I suppose. So some ideas of what you could use to dress your paper dolls. You could just cut images out of magazines of clothing that you like. You could just cover the whole doll in plain paper and then just paint it if you wanted to, and you can use lots of colour or no colour. You could just use newsprint, book pages, wrapping paper. There's so many different things that you could use fabric like I did in my first set of paper dolls. There are so many different things I'm sure you have around the house that you could use, but try and when you're dressing them, remember that you're dressing them as a persona that you have lived at some stage in your life. Yeah. And another thing that I wanted to point out is my last paper doll, the one with the planet head, is one that I have kept as a portrayal of my metaphysical self. So a portrayal of myself spiritually, rather than as a physical being on planet Earth. So the planet, probably using the planet as a head, probably makes more sense now that I've explained that to you. And you could do the same. It's quite a good idea to leave the last paper doll as one that is more etheric rather than a physical representation. Thing is, you don't have to dress your paper dolls in clothes. You could cover them in words. You could cover them in symbols. There's lots of different ways you could represent your persona, even just different colors, that sort of thing. I specifically decided to make these paper dolls kind of vintagey looking to go with the theme of this book that I'm creating. So I really liked the tea dyed paper and the pencil. I thought it kind of gives it a bit of a vintagey kind of black and white photograph almost kind of look. Anyway, it does in my head. And for the last paper doll, the one with the planet, I actually didn't draw clothes at all. I just left the paper blank. And the other thing is that I don't really take much care to keep my artwork pristine. So you'll see that the paper picks up smudges and you know, colors and stuff as I go along, and that doesn't bother me. I like the idea of the process of creating being represented in the final art piece, so there will be smudges and things that are not perfect, because life is not perfect and we are not perfect. There is no such thing as perfect for every single person, so I like that. And now I'm moving to the back of the paper dolls. I am just going to cover each one in a sheet from a dictionary, just a page from a dictionary. Just going to keep it quite plain and simple. Again, you could use wrapping paper, any type of paper, newspaper, junk mail. You can just paint the backs, but we are going to be writing on it, so you do want to be able to write over whatever you put on the backs of your dolls. And then I am tearing the edges rather than cutting them, again just because I like that more kind of organic textural feeling to my artwork. I'm not really a straight lines kind of girl, so this is what they look like with all of their dictionary pages on them. Quite cool, I think. And then I am going to just use some watercolors and color the backs, just really randomly, just with colors that I liked. There was kind of no specific thinking behind this. I just chose pretty colors. I find that when I get to the end of a piece like this or a creative project like this, I'm kind of over all the thinking part of it and I just want to have fun. So this is kind of the bit where I just do whatever I want and have fun with, you know, putting paint on paper. And obviously you don't have to colour the back if you don't want to. I just wanted to add a little bit of colour because the front was quite neutral. You could cover it with tin foil if you wanted to. You could just paint them one colour. You could just cover them with the book page and leave it with no colour. There's lots of different things you could do, just remembering that we are going to be writing over it, so you don't want it anything that you do to be too dark. The paper doll's nearly complete now. I just like to finish off the edges of my work, so in this instance I'm using an ink pad and just going around the outside of each of the paper dolls and smudging it in a bit. I just like that it kind of finishes it off a bit more. If you don't have an ink pad, you could just use a charcoal pencil or some chalk, or eyeshadow works great. You know, anything like that, or you don't have to do it at all. Do whatever works for you with what you've got where you are. So we are coming to the end of this video now. The last little bit of these paper dolls is that on the back of each one I chose to write a statement, and the statement is something that I would have told myself, knowing what I know now, with the life I've lived. It's a statement that I would have liked to have heard at that stage in my life, or at a stage in my life that this persona that I've created represents. So you can see what I have written. Things like I am safe, I am supported, I am cared for, I am loved. But you make your statements specific to you and the things that you would have liked to have heard or known for sure at that stage in your life. And that's it. Our paper dolls are done. Thank you for joining me again today, and episode 3 part 2 will be up soon. See you next time.